Here, criminal barristers in England and Wales will this morning begin strike action that's expected to delay trials. The dispute is about how much they're paid in legal aid to defend people who can't afford a lawyer. The government says the walkouts will only delay justice for victims. Well, let's speak now to Chris Daw, who is a barrister and author of Justice on Trial, about reforming the criminal justice system. Thank you very much for joining us today. And this strike, it's been described as saying that what is at stake here is the survival of the criminal justice system itself. Is that overstating things?
No, it's not. I think it's important to understand that barristers are in the criminal courts are mostly self-employed, and we're dealing here in particular with a number of factors that have led to this action. They are the fact that the delays in the criminal justice system as a result of people leaving the criminal bar have become so catastrophic that victims cannot get justice. And I'll just give you one example. The average wait for a rape case to come to trial is now 1,500 days. That's over 4 years, where victims are having to wait and wait and wait, and sometimes they turn up at the trial to find that the case has to be adjourned because there's no judges and in many cases no lawyers to deal with the case. And it's got to the point now where criminal barristers are walking out of the profession in huge numbers. 40% of the most junior criminal barristers, who only earn an average of £12,000 a year, have left in 1 year. It's got to the point now where the criminal bar can't survive, and if the criminal bar can't survive, there can be no Crown Court trials and no justice in the most serious cases in our system.
So you're talking there in the case of junior barristers who've gone through a lot of training, many years at university, earning less than the minimum wage, aren't you?
Yes, you are, and I'm talking about £12,000 gross fees, and then from that are expenses and travel and such like, which has to be deducted. And as you say, quite rightly, that is less than the minimum wage. And the only reason that's possible is because barristers are self-employed, so they're not subject to minimum wage regulations. And the government knows that and has got away with it for decades. We've seen something like a 40% cut in incomes for criminal barristers over just the last 15 years. And that's the only part of our public sector, when you think about it, the criminal justice system is a vital part of our society, and no other part of our society has seen levels of remuneration cut by that much.
Now, someone who's looking at this story today, maybe coming to it new, might see the Justice Secretary Dominic Raab saying that barristers should agree to the proposed 15% pay rise on offer. So someone like that coming fresh to this story might ask why you're going on strike rather than accepting that offer.
Well, it's not really 15%. That's the truth of it. There was a recommendation, the government's own recommendation was that 15% should have been granted immediately at the beginning of this year. What in fact the government is suggesting is 15%, which will be divided up not just amongst criminal barristers, but other parts of the criminal justice system. And the barristers won't see any of that money till 2024. With inflation running at 10%, the truth is, by the time the money comes through, it will have been wiped out by inflation. So this is a complete illusion and a dishonest illusion created by the government that there's some bonanza of 15% being offered to barristers. But even if that were true, which it's not, don't forget what I've just said. Incomes have been cut by 40% on average over the last 15 years. So 15% wouldn't even touch the size of that.
And is it the case that, just to clarify, that this proposed raise does not apply to cases that are in that backlog, that 60,000 case backlog?
Exactly. It doesn't apply to any cases that are already ongoing. So barristers who are conducting cases, and junior barristers, I say, are often working for a pittance, sometimes just tens of pounds a day, or even for nothing if a case is adjourned for no reason and completely out of their control. So it doesn't apply to any of that. But the 60,000 cases in the system which are waiting to get to trial are still going to be remunerated at those ludicrously low rates, which go back to basically the early 2000s. Late 1990s. And the truth of it is, one thing matters. Why are hundreds and hundreds of criminal barristers leaving every year? And we're down to about 2,000 or so in total in the whole country. The reason is because the criminal justice system and the defence of the most vulnerable in our society has been underfunded for decades, not just by this government, but by others. And something has to happen, or we're going to have no one left to defend and prosecute in the Crown Court.
Just very, very briefly, in a line, if you would, Chris, the strike action currently due to last through July, most of July. Could it go on longer?
Yes, in fact, it could go on into August or indeed beyond. And I wouldn't be surprised if the government doesn't do something soon about this, and certainly over the next month or so, to see effectively an all-out walkout so that the Crown Courts will shut. That's a distinct possibility. It's not what anyone in my profession wants, but if you are going to drain a system of resource to the point that it cannot function anymore, at some point, it's got to stop and there's got to be a drastic reset. And if that's necessary as a result of barristers walking out, then so be it.
Chris Daw, barrister, thank you very much for your time today.